Captain Jake Morrison was drinking his morning coffee when the alarm started screaming. The hot liquid splashed across his uniform as he jumped from his chair in the command center of the Coalition vessel Stellar Guardian. Lieutenant Amy Carter was already at her sensor station, her fingers dancing across the control panel with practiced speed. "Captain, we have an unscheduled hyperspace emergence," Amy called out, her voice tight with concern. "Distance approximately 2 million kilometers from Kepler 442b. The ship is massive, sir." Jake wiped the coffee from his jacket and moved to the main display screen. What he saw made his blood run cold. The vessel that had appeared was unlike anything in the Coalition database. It was huge, easily twice the size of their largest dreadnought, and its design was completely alien to everything they knew about galactic shipbuilding. The ship was angular and brutal-looking, covered in what appeared to be thick armor plating. Strange markings covered its hull, symbols that meant nothing to any Coalition language expert. But what disturbed Jake the most was how the ship just sat there in space, completely silent, like a predator waiting for the right moment to strike. "Amy, run a full spectrum analysis," Jake ordered. "I want to know everything about that ship. Hull composition, energy signatures, weapon systems, everything." Amy's hands moved quickly across her controls. After several minutes, she looked up with confusion written across her face. "Sir, this is impossible. The ship isn't in our database." "Not even close?" "The design philosophy is completely different from anything we've ever encountered." Dr. Carl Hughes, the station's xenobiologist, had arrived on the bridge and was studying the readings over Amy's shoulder. "Captain, this is fascinating. The ship appears to be built entirely for warfare. Look at these armor configurations, these weapon mounts. Every single design choice seems focused on combat effectiveness." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. In the 200 years since the Coalition had been formed, they had encountered dozens of different species. Some were peaceful traders, others were explorers, and a few were territorial but reasonable. None had ever built ships that looked like instruments of pure destruction. "Open a channel to Admiral Bennett," Jake commanded. "She needs to see this immediately." The main screen flickered and Admiral Lisa Bennett's face appeared. She was aboard the Coalition flagship Harmony's Edge, currently stationed 3 systems away. Her expression grew serious as she studied the sensor data that Amy was transmitting. "Captain Morrison, what exactly are we looking at?" "Admiral Bennett," asked unknown vessel Admiral, "appeared without warning 2 hours ago. It's been completely silent since arrival. No response to any of our standard greeting protocols." Admiral Bennett studied the data for several long minutes. "The design is primitive yet somehow threatening. Those weapon configurations don't match anything in our tactical databases. Captain, I'm ordering all Coalition ships in the system to maintain defensive positions. Do not approach that vessel under any circumstances." Jake nodded. "Understood, Admiral." "What about first contact protocols?" "Continue broadcasting standard greetings in all known languages. Maybe they're just cautious. But Captain, I'm also ordering the battlecruisers Resolution and Unity to your position. If this goes badly, I want you to have backup." The transmission ended and Jake turned to his communications officer, Danny Turner. "Danny, how many languages have we tried?" 217, sir. "Including mathematical sequences and universal symbols?" "Nothing. The ship just sits there scanning us." "Scanning us?" Jake asked. Amy looked up from her station. "Yes, sir. The vessel has been conducting what appear to be detailed sensor sweeps of our ships and the planet below. Very thorough scans, much more advanced than our own capabilities." Dr. Hughes moved to another console and began analyzing the alien ship's scanning patterns. "Captain, these energy signatures are unlike anything I've ever seen. They're not using exotic matter like our ships. The power source appears to be some form of fusion, but it's incredibly efficient. Much more so than our reactors." Commander Pete Jackson, Jake's tactical officer, had been quietly studying the alien vessel's weapon systems. "Sir, I'm reading multiple weapon batteries along the ship's hull. The configuration suggests they're designed for long-range engagement, but I can't identify the weapon types. Our computers don't recognize the energy patterns. Jake stared at the main screen where the mysterious ship continued its silent vigil. How long before the battle cruisers arrive? 18 hours, sir, Pete replied. 18 hours, Jake repeated quietly. Amy, keep monitoring their scanning patterns. I want to know if they start focusing on any particular targets. Danny, continue broadcasting friendship protocols. Maybe they're just being careful. But even as he said the words, Jake didn't believe them. The ship's design spoke of a species that had spent centuries perfecting the art of war. The smooth curves and multi-purpose designs favored by Coalition vessels seemed almost naive compared to the brutal efficiency of the alien warship. Dr. Hughes called up a three-dimensional model of the unknown vessel on his screen. Captain, look at this. The ship's entire structure is built around what appears to be a massive main gun. The armor is layered in a way that suggests they expect to take heavy fire. This isn't an exploration vessel or a diplomatic ship. This is a weapon designed to destroy other ships. But whose ships? Jake wondered aloud. If they're from outside Coalition space, who have they been fighting? The question hung in the air like a dark cloud. The Coalition had mapped most of the local galactic arm over the past 2 centuries. They had encountered primitive species, still developing spaceflight and advanced civilizations that had moved beyond the need for military vessels. But they had never found evidence of a species that had continued to develop purely military technology. Amy suddenly straightened at her station. Captain, I'm detecting movement. Small craft are launching from the alien vessel. Jake spun toward the main screen. Sure enough, tiny dots were separating from the massive ship and moving in different directions. How many? 12 craft, sir. They're spreading out in a search pattern. Very fast, much faster than our fighters. Dr. Hughes was studying the new contacts with growing alarm. Captain, these aren't manned fighters. They appear to be automated reconnaissance drones. And they're heading directly for our ships. Jake felt his hands clench into fists. Pete, raise shields. All defensive systems online. But do not lock weapons on those drones unless they show hostile intent. Shields up, sir. Defensive systems active. The bridge fell silent as everyone watched the approaching drones. They moved with a precision and purpose that was both impressive and terrifying. Each drone seemed to know exactly where it was going, and what it was supposed to do. Sir, Amy called out, her voice barely above a whisper. The drones are beginning detailed scans of our ships. Much more detailed than anything we're capable of. They're mapping our hull composition, shield frequencies, weapon placements, everything. Jake stared at the tactical display showing the 12 drones methodically examining every Coalition vessel in the system. Whoever these newcomers were, they weren't just saying hello. They were preparing for war. 24 hours had passed since the alien warship arrived, and Captain Jake Morrison had not slept. The mysterious vessel continued its slow orbit around Kepler 442b, conducting what appeared to be incredibly detailed scans of both the planet and every Coalition ship in the system. The silence from the alien crew was becoming more unnerving with each passing hour. Commander Pete Jackson approached Jake's command chair with a steaming cup of coffee and a grim expression. Sir, the battlecruisers Resolution and Unity arrived 3 hours ago, but that ship hasn't changed its behavior at all. It's like they don't even consider our reinforcements a threat. Jake accepted the coffee gratefully and studied the main tactical display. 7 Coalition ships now formed a defensive perimeter around Kepler 442b, including 2 of their most powerful battle cruisers. Any reasonable species would at least acknowledge the increased military presence. The alien ship simply continued its methodical scanning as if the Coalition fleet was nothing more than an interesting collection of space debris. Dr. Carl Hughes had been working at his station for hours, trying to decode the energy signatures coming from the alien vessel. His hair was disheveled and his eyes were red from staring at screens, but his excitement was obvious. Captain, I think I'm beginning to understand their scanning technology. It's not more advanced than ours, it's just completely different. Where we use broad spectrum sensors that gather general information, they're using focused beams that penetrate deep into our ship's structure. What kind of information are they getting? Jake asked. Everything, Carl replied with obvious concern. Hull thickness, internal layout, power distribution, crew quarters, weapons magazines, shield generators. They know more about our ships now than some of our own engineers do. Lieutenant Amy Carter looked up from her sensor station with worry written across her face. Sir, I'm detecting new activity from the alien vessel, and they're launching more of those reconnaissance drones, but these ones are different. Larger and equipped with what appears to be more sophisticated scanning equipment. Jake moved to Amy's station and studied her readings. How many this time? 6 drones, sir, but they're heading toward the planet instead of our ships. They seem to be conducting a detailed survey of Kepler 442b's surface. On the planet below, Governor Helen Ross was dealing with her own crisis. The peaceful aquatic species known as Zephyrians, who inhabited the ocean world, were becoming increasingly agitated by the alien presence in their sky. The governor had already ordered the evacuation of major population centers as a precautionary measure, but she was running out of places to move people. The coalition's best cryptographers had been working around the clock to decode strange transmissions detected coming from the alien ship. Dr. Nino Walsh led the team of language experts who had been trying to break down the alien communications for hours. The transmissions weren't directed at the coalition fleet, but seemed to be internal communications within the mysterious vessel. Governor Ross, we're detecting what appears to be military communications, Dr. Walsh reported over the communication. Linked to the planet. The linguistic patterns suggest a highly organized command structure. We're seeing repeated use of terms that roughly translate to tactical assessments and threat evaluations. Governor Ross felt a chill run through her. They planning to attack the planet? We don't know yet, Dr. Walsh admitted. But the communication patterns suggest they're treating this as some kind of military operation. They're not exploring or making peaceful contact. They're conducting reconnaissance. Back aboard the Stellar Guardian, Jake was growing more frustrated. By the hour, every attempt at communication had been met with complete silence. The alien ship continued its scans and surveillance as if the coalition fleet didn't exist. The psychological pressure of being watched and analyzed by an unknown enemy was beginning to affect his crew's morale. Danny Turner, the communications officer, had been trying every frequency and protocol known to coalition science. Captain, I've tried everything. Standard greeting protocols, mathematical sequences, pictographic messages, even music. Nothing gets any response from that ship. Doctor. Hughes suddenly looked up from his workstation with an expression of growing alarm. Captain, I think I know why they're not responding to our communications. Look at these energy readings from their reconnaissance drones. Jake studied the data that Carl was displaying on the main screen. What am I looking at? The drones are hardened against electromagnetic interference in ways that shouldn't be possible with their apparent technology level. They're designed to operate in environments with massive electronic warfare activity. Captain, I think these people come from a place where communications are routinely jammed or intercepted. Commander Pete Jackson joined the conversation with his own disturbing observations. Sir, I've been analyzing their scanning patterns. They're not just gathering information about our ships. They're looking for weaknesses. Shield frequency variations, weapon blind spots, structural stress points. This isn't scientific curiosity. This is target analysis. The implications of Pete's words hit everyone on the bridge like a physical blow. The alien vessel wasn't conducting peaceful reconnaissance. It was preparing for battle by learning everything it could about potential enemies. The silence wasn't caution or cultural difference. It was operational security. Amy's voice cut through the tense atmosphere on the bridge. Sir, I'm detecting something new. The alien ship is moving. All eyes turned to the main tactical display. For the first time since its arrival, the massive warship was changing its orbital pattern. Instead of the slow, methodical circle it had been following, The ship was moving into a higher orbit that would give it a better view of the entire Coalition fleet. Tactical assessment? Jake asked. Pete studied his displays with growing concern. Sir, from that position, they would have clear firing solutions on all of our ships simultaneously. It's a classic high ground position for fleet engagement. Dr. Hughes was monitoring the ship's energy output during the maneuver. Captain, their engines are incredible. The power output is enormous, but it's so efficiently contained that we can barely detect it. They're using some kind of fusion technology that's far more advanced than anything in Coalition space. Jake felt the weight of command settling heavily on his shoulders. 7 Coalition ships faced 1 alien vessel, but the aliens had spent an entire day learning everything about Coalition technology while revealing nothing about themselves. The tactical advantage that should have belonged to the Coalition fleet was evaporating with each passing hour. Danny suddenly straightened at his communications station. Captain, I'm receiving a transmission from Admiral Bennett. The main screen flickered and Admiral Bennett's face appeared. Her expression was grim. Captain Morrison, we've been monitoring the situation from the Harmony's edge. I'm ordering you to attempt one final communication with the alien vessel. If they don't respond within 6 hours, I want you to begin a slow withdrawal from the system. Admiral, are we abandoning Kepler 442b? Jake asked. No, Captain. We're going to find out what these aliens really want. And if they want to fight, we're going to make sure it happens on our terms, not theirs. 36 hours after the alien warship's arrival, Dr. Carl Hughes made a discovery that changed everything. He had been analyzing the reconnaissance drones that continued to circle the Coalition fleet, and what he found made his hands shake. As he called Captain Jake Morrison to his workstation. Captain, you need to see this immediately, Carl said, his voice tight with barely controlled fear. I've been studying the alien technology and I think I understand why nothing makes sense. Jake hurried over to Carl's station, followed by Commander Pete Jackson and Lieutenant Amy Carter. The screen displayed a detailed breakdown of one of the alien reconnaissance drones that had passed close enough for intensive scanning. What am I looking at, Carl? Jake asked. So, this technology isn't more advanced than ours. It's differently advanced. Look at this power source. Carl highlighted a section of the drone's internal structure. It's using primitive fusion technology, the kind we abandoned 50 years ago, but somehow they've made it more reliable and harder to disrupt than our exotic matter reactors. Pete studied the technical readout with growing unease. How is that possible? Because they've built everything around a single concept that we've forgotten, Carl explained. Survivability. In combat, our technology is elegant and efficient. Theirs is brutal and practical. Every component in this drone is hardened against electromagnetic pulse, quantum interference, radiation, and physical damage. Amy pulled up additional sensor data on her screen. Dr. Hughes is right, Captain. When we tried to capture one of these drones with a tractor beam yesterday, it self-destructed rather than be taken. The explosion was contained fusion, designed to destroy the drone completely while minimizing damage to nearby vessels. Jake felt a cold realization settling. In his stomach, they're not just advanced, they're paranoid? Exactly, Carl confirmed. Every piece of technology on that ship appears to be designed by people who expect to be attacked, infiltrated, and betrayed. They've spent generations perfecting the art of warfare while we've spent the same time perfecting the art of peace. Communications. Specialist Danny Turner suddenly looked up from his station with excitement. Captain, I'm finally detecting internal transmissions from the alien ship. The computer is beginning to analyze their language patterns. Jake moved quickly to Danny's position. What are you hearing? It's fragmented, sir, but the linguistic analysis is disturbing. Their language contains concepts that don't translate well into any coalition dialect. Words that seem to mean acceptable losses, total destruction, and something that roughly translates to complete annihilation of enemy forces. Dr. Hughes joined them at the communications station and studied the translation algorithms. Captain, this language suggests a culture that has been at war for a very long time. Look at these military terms. They have dozens of different words for types of warfare, tactical situations, and combat scenarios that we don't even have concepts for. Admiral. Lisa Bennett's face appeared on the main screen as she opened a priority communication channel from the Coalition flagship. Her expression was grim as she studied the reports that were being transmitted to her ship. Captain Morrison, are you telling me that we're dealing with a species that has evolved purely for warfare? Admiral Bennett asked. Yes, ma'am, Jake replied. Their entire technological development appears to have been driven by military necessity. While we've been building ships for exploration and trade, they've been building ships to destroy other ships. Admiral Bennett was quiet for several long moments as she considered the implications. Captain, the Coalition has been at peace for over 200 years. Our ships, our tactics, our entire military doctrine is designed around maintaining peace and deterring conflict. If these aliens are as militaristic as you suggest, we may be facing an enemy we're not prepared to fight. Before Jake could respond, Amy's voice cut across the bridge with urgent alarm. Captain, the alien vessel is launching more craft. Much larger ones this time. All attention turned to the main tactical display. The mysterious warship was deploying what appeared to be heavily armed shuttles, each one twice the size of Coalition fighters. The shuttles moved with the same purposeful efficiency as the reconnaissance drones, but their weapon signatures were much more pronounced. How many? Jake asked. 8 shuttles, sir. They're not heading for our ships or the planet. They're taking up positions around the system's outer edge. Commander Pete Jackson studied the tactical implications with growing concern. Sir, those positions would allow them to intercept any ship trying to leave the system. They're establishing a blockade. Dr. Hughes was monitoring the energy signatures from the new craft with fascination and fear. Captain, these shuttles are armed with weapons I don't recognize. The power signatures suggest some kind of kinetic projectile system rather than energy. Weapons? Kinetic projectiles? Jake asked. Like bullets? More like artillery shells traveling at significant fractions of light speed, Carl explained. Captain, our shields are designed to deflect energy weapons and small debris. I'm not sure how effective they would be against solid projectiles moving at those velocities. Danny Turner suddenly straightened at his communications station. Captain, I'm receiving a transmission from the alien vessel. It's directed at us this time. The bridge fell silent as everyone stared at the communications console. After more than a day of complete silence, the aliens were finally ready to talk. Put it through, Jake ordered. The main screen flickered and filled with static before clearing to show the interior of what was obviously a warship's bridge. The figure that appeared was clearly not from any species in the Coalition database. The being was roughly humanoid, but with distinctly different features, wearing what appeared to be a military uniform covered in symbols and insignia when the alien spoke. The voice was transmitted through the ship's translation systems, but the tone was unmistakably cold and professional. Coalition vessels, this is Captain Roy Brooks of the Earth Alliance warship USS Vengeance. State your intentions regarding the human colony on the planet below. Jake felt the blood drain from his face. Human colony. The Coalition had no record of any human species, and Kepler 442b was inhabited by the peaceful Zephyrians. But the alien captain had spoken with the absolute certainty of someone who knew exactly what he was talking about. Captain Brooks, Jake replied carefully. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Coalition vessel Stellar Guardian. There's no human colony on Kepler 442b. The planet is inhabited by the Zephyrian species, who are members of the Galactic Coalition. The human captain's expression didn't change, but something cold and dangerous flickered in his eyes. Captain Morrison, 3 years ago, a human colony ship with 50,000 civilians went missing in this sector. Our long-range sensors detected the wreckage of that ship on the ocean floor of the planet you claim belongs to your Coalition. The implications hit Jake like a physical blow. If there really had been a human colony ship, and if it had crashed on Kepler 442b, then the Coalition had failed to protect or even notice 50,000 people who had died in their territory. Governor Helen Ross's voice came through the communication. System from the planet below. Captain Morrison, we need to check the Zephyrian historical records immediately. They may have found wreckage that they never reported to us. Captain Brooks continued speaking, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. Captain Morrison, you have 1 hour to provide a full accounting of what happened to our people. If your coalition was responsible for their deaths through negligence or hostile action, you will answer for those crimes. The transmission ended, leaving the coalition bridge in stunned silence. They weren't dealing with first contact anymore. They were dealing with humans who believed the coalition had killed their people, and who had arrived with enough firepower to make their displeasure very clear. The hour that Captain Roy Brooks had given them felt like the longest 60 minutes in Captain Jake Morrison's life. Down on Kepler 442b, Governor Helen Ross was working frantically with the Zephyrian elders to search through their historical records. The aquatic species kept detailed accounts of everything that happened in their oceans, but they had never thought to report every piece of space debris to the coalition. Dr. Carl Hughes was coordinating the search from the Stellar Guardian, while Admiral Lisa Bennett maintained an open communication channel from the coalition flagship. The tension on every ship was thick enough to cut with a knife as everyone waited to learn the truth about the missing human colony ship. Governor Ross, what are you finding down there? Jake asked through the communication link. Helen's voice came back strained and tired. Captain, the Zephyrians are checking their ocean floor monitoring systems. They say they found wreckage about 3 years ago, but assumed it was just another failed expedition from one of the primitive species they occasionally encounter. They built a memorial site around it but never investigated the debris closely. Commander. Pete Jackson was monitoring the human warship's position while the search continued. Sir, the USS Vengeance hasn't moved, but those armed shuttles are still maintaining their blockade positions. We're effectively trapped in this system until they decide to let us leave. Lieutenant Amy Carter looked up from her sensor station with a grave expression. Captain, I'm detecting increased activity from the human ship. They're powering up what appears to be their main weapon systems. Jake felt his stomach tighten. How long until the hour is up? 17 minutes, sir, Danny Turner replied from his communications post. Admiral. Bennett's voice came through the speakers with barely controlled tension. Captain Morrison, I want you to know that I've been reviewing our historical records as well. 3 years ago, we did receive reports of unusual hyperspace disturbances in this sector, but our investigation teams found nothing. If there really was a colony ship that crashed here, we failed those people completely. The admission hung in the air like a death sentence. The Coalition's failure to properly investigate the hyperspace disturbances had cost 50,000 human lives, and now their relatives had arrived with enough military power to make the Coalition pay for that failure. Governor Ross's voice suddenly crackled through the communication system with urgent excitement. Captain Morrison, we found it. The Zephyrians have located the wreckage site. It's definitely a large spacecraft, and there are definitely human remains. The ship appears to have suffered catastrophic engine failure during hyperspace transition. Dr. Hughes was analyzing the data being transmitted from the planet's surface. Captain, the wreckage pattern suggests the ship was trying to make an emergency landing. The crew managed to bring it down in one piece, but the impact was still fatal for everyone aboard. Jake closed his eyes and tried to process the magnitude of the tragedy. 50,000 people had died alone and afraid on an alien world, and no one had even known they were there. The Coalition's peaceful expansion into space had always assumed that anyone in distress would call for help. They had never considered that some species might be too proud or too suspicious to ask for assistance. Sir, Amy called out, I'm receiving another transmission from the human warship. Captain Brooks appeared on the main screen again, but this time his expression was even colder than before. Captain Morrison, our sensors confirm that you have located the wreckage of the colony ship New Horizons. We are prepared to hear your explanation for how 50,000 civilians died in Coalition space without any assistance or even acknowledgement from your government. Jake stepped forward to face the human captain directly. Captain Brooks, Want you to know that the Coalition had no knowledge of your people's presence in this system. We detected hyperspace disturbances 3 years ago, but our investigation found no evidence of ships or survivors. We failed your people, and for that we take full responsibility. Captain Brooks studied Jake's face for several long moments before responding. Captain Morrison, failure to protect civilians in your territory is a serious matter. However, our investigation of this system has revealed something more disturbing than simple negligence. The human captain's words sent a chill through everyone. On the Coalition bridge. What do you mean? Jake asked. We've been monitoring your communications and analyzing your ship designs for the past 2 days, Captain Brooks explained. Your Coalition appears to be a peaceful organization that has forgotten how to defend itself. Your ships are beautiful and efficient, but they're completely inadequate for real warfare. Commander Pete Jackson stepped forward with obvious anger. Captain Brooks, the Coalition has maintained peace in this sector for over 200 years. We don't need warships because we've learned to resolve conflicts through diplomacy. Captain Brooks's expression didn't change. Commander, diplomacy only works when both sides want peace. What happens when you encounter a species that wants to conquer rather than negotiate? What happens when you face an enemy that sees your peaceful nature as weakness to be exploited? Dr. Hughes realized where the human captain was leading the conversation. You're saying that our peaceful evolution has made us vulnerable to more aggressive species. Exactly, Captain Brooks confirmed. The galaxy is a dangerous place, and you've forgotten that fact. Your failure to protect our colony ship is just one example of how unprepared you are for real threats. Admiral Bennett's voice cut through the conversation from the Coalition flagship. Captain Brooks, are you threatening the Coalition? The human captain turned his attention to the Admiral with the same cold professionalism he had shown everyone else. Admiral Bennett, I'm not threatening anyone. I'm simply pointing out that your Coalition's peaceful nature has created a security vacuum in this region of space. Other species have noticed this weakness, and some of them are far less reasonable than humans. Jake felt a growing sense of unease at the implications of the human captain's words. What other species? Captain Morrison, human exploration ships have encountered evidence of at least 3 different military powers that have been probing Coalition space over the past decade. They've been testing your defenses and studying your capabilities. So far, they've been deterred by uncertainty about what they might face, but that uncertainty won't last forever. Lieutenant Amy Carter looked up from her sensor station with alarm. Captain, I'm detecting new hyperspace signatures. Multiple ships are entering the system. All eyes turned to the tactical display as new contacts began appearing on the screen. But these weren't Coalition vessels responding to the crisis. These were ships with the same angular, predatory design as the USS Vengeance. Captain Brooks spoke into his communication system without taking his eyes off the Coalition officers. This is Captain Brooks to all Earth Alliance vessels. Maintain defensive positions and await further orders. Jake counted 12 new ships as they took positions throughout the system. Each one was a warship designed for one purpose, and together, they represented more military power than the Coalition had seen in generations. Captain Brooks, Admiral Bennett said carefully, how many ships does Earth have? The human captain smiled for the first time since the conversation began, but it was not a reassuring expression. Admiral, Earth has been preparing for galactic contact for over a century. We've built our civilization around the assumption that the universe is hostile and that survival requires strength. The fleet you see here represents one task force from one sector command. The implications of his words hit everyone simultaneously. Humanity hadn't just achieved spaceflight. They had militarized space travel to a degree that the Coalition couldn't even comprehend. Admiral Lisa Bennett made the decision that would change galactic history. After 3 hours of tense negotiations over open communication channels, she agreed to meet with Captain Roy Brooks aboard the USS Vengeance to discuss the future relationship between Earth and the Coalition. The decision horrified her staff, but Bennett knew that refusing the human captain's invitation would be seen as an act of cowardice. Captain, Jake Morrison watched from the bridge of the Stellar Guardian as Admiral Bennett's shuttle approached the massive human warship. The USS Vengeance was even more intimidating up close, its hull covered in weapon systems that served no purpose other than destroying other ships. The docking bay that opened to receive the Admiral's shuttle was large enough to hold 3 Coalition fighters. Sir, Lieutenant Amy Carter reported, "I'm monitoring the Admiral's shuttle communications. She's requesting permission to bring a security escort." Captain Brooks's response came back immediately through the open channel. "Admiral Bennett, you may bring whatever escort makes you comfortable. However, I should warn you that our security protocols are somewhat different from yours." When Admiral Bennett's shuttle docked inside the USS Vengeance, she discovered what Captain Brooks meant by different security protocols. The humans who met her at the airlock were wearing powered armor that made Coalition security forces look like children playing dress-up. The lead soldier, who introduced himself as Sergeant Kevin Palmer, carried weapons that were obviously designed to kill rather than stun. Ambassador Claire Thompson, who served as Earth's diplomatic representative aboard the Vengeance, welcomed Admiral Bennett with professional courtesy but obvious caution. Claire had been watching Coalition transmissions for hours and had formed definite opinions about the peaceful organization that claimed to govern this region of space. "Admiral Bennett," Claire said as they walked through corridors lined with armored bulkheads, "I want you to understand that Earth's approach to galactic relations is based on centuries of hard experience. We've learned that good intentions mean nothing without the power to enforce them." The Admiral studied the human ship's interior as they moved toward the conference room. Everything was designed for combat efficiency rather than comfort. The corridors were wide enough for armed soldiers to move quickly. The walls were reinforced against weapons fire, and emergency systems were built to function even if large sections of the ship were destroyed. In the conference room, Admiral Bennett found herself facing not just Captain Brooks, but also Colonel Matt Hayes, the ship's Marine commander, and Dr. Susan Ward, Earth's leading expert on galactic civilizations. The humans had obviously been preparing for this meeting much longer than the Coalition had been preparing for first contact. "Admiral," Captain Brooks began, "before we discuss the future, I think you need to understand the present. Earth has been aware of galactic civilization for over 50 years. We've been studying your technology, your politics, and your military capabilities during that entire time." Admiral Bennett felt a chill run down her spine. "You've been watching us for 50 years without making contact?" Dr. Ward answered the question with clinical precision. "Admiral, Earth's policy has always been to understand potential threats before revealing our own capabilities. Your coalition appeared to be peaceful, but we needed to determine whether that peace was genuine or simply a facade hiding more aggressive intentions." Colonel Hayes leaned forward in his chair with the predatory grace of a professional soldier. "Admiral, what we discovered during our observation period was almost worse than finding an aggressive enemy. We found a civilization that had forgotten how to defend itself." The Coalition has maintained peace for over 2 centuries, Admiral Bennett replied with some heat. "We've resolved conflicts through negotiation and compromise rather than violence." Captain Brooks studied the Admiral's face carefully before responding. "Admiral, that peace has been possible only because you haven't encountered a truly hostile species. Your diplomatic solutions work when both sides want to find common ground. What happens when you face an enemy that wants to destroy you rather than negotiate with you?" Ambassador Thompson activated a holographic display that showed a detailed map of the local galactic region. "Admiral Bennett, during our 50 years of observation, we've identified at least 3 different military powers that have been probing Coalition space. They've been testing your defenses and studying your response times." The map highlighted several border regions where unknown ships had been detected entering Coalition territory before disappearing again. Admiral Bennett recognized some of the incidents, but others were completely new to her. "We've classified most of these as random exploration missions," Admiral Bennett said. Dr. Ward shook her head with obvious concern. "Admiral, these weren't exploration missions. They were reconnaissance operations. Each probe went deeper into Coalition space and gathered more detailed information about your defensive capabilities. Colonel Hayes activated another display that showed Coalition ship designs alongside the hulls of unknown vessels detected during the probing missions. Admiral, your ships are marvels of engineering, but they're designed for multi-purpose operations rather than warfare. Beautiful, efficient, and completely inadequate for sustained combat against dedicated warships. Admiral Bennett stared at the comparison displays with growing alarm. The unknown ships were smaller than Coalition vessels but heavily armed and armored. Their design philosophy was obviously focused on combat effectiveness rather than the peaceful, multi-purpose approach favored by Coalition engineers. Captain Brooks continued the briefing with military precision. Admiral, Earth's intelligence analysis suggests that at least one of these unknown powers is preparing for large-scale military operations against Coalition territory. Your peaceful nature has convinced them that conquest would be relatively easy. That's why Earth has decided to make contact now, Ambassador Thompson explained. We can't allow hostile forces to destabilize this region of space. Too many human settlements are scattered throughout Coalition territory. Admiral Bennett felt the weight of revelation settling on her shoulders. How many human settlements? Dr. Ward consulted her datapad before answering. Admiral, Earth has established over 200 colonies in this galactic region during the past century. Most of them are small research stations or mining operations, but several have populations in the hundreds of thousands. The implications were staggering. Humanity had been quietly spreading throughout Coalition space for decades without anyone knowing they existed. They had built a shadow civilization that was completely invisible to Coalition sensors and intelligence services. Colonel Hayes demonstrated just how invisible human technology could be by casually disabling the conference room security system with what appeared to be a simple handheld device. The Coalition's most advanced security measures were bypassed in seconds by human electronic warfare tools that looked primitive but were incredibly effective. Admiral, Captain Brooks said as Colonel Hayes restored the security system, Earth's technology isn't necessarily more advanced than yours, but it's designed with different priorities. Where Coalition technology emphasizes efficiency and peaceful applications, human technology emphasizes survival and combat effectiveness. Ambassador Thompson leaned forward with obvious sincerity. Admiral Bennett, Earth doesn't want to conquer Coalition space or replace your government. We want to work with you to defend this region against the threats that are coming. But that cooperation requires the Coalition to acknowledge that the galaxy is more dangerous than you've realized. Admiral Bennett studied the faces of the humans around the conference table. They weren't threatening the Coalition with conquest. They were offering protection in exchange for partnership. But the price of that protection would be admitting that 2 centuries of peaceful evolution had left the Coalition vulnerable to enemies they didn't even know existed. What exactly are you proposing? Admiral Bennett asked. Captain Brooks smiled grimly. Admiral, we're proposing that the Coalition learn how to fight before someone forces you to.